and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky held a press marathon in Kyiv, gathering hundreds of journalists to respond to their questions. The marathon lasted more than 14 hours. Ukraine's National Records Agency declared it the longest in the history. To talk more about the current media landscape in Ukraine, we're joined in the studio today by Golovenko. He's the media lawyer, Institute of Mass Information. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So, as I have already mentioned, Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, held one of the longest in Ukraine's history press conferences, or should we call it the press marathon? It probably could be called the longest in the world, but we're not the ones to actually claim it. Now, the location for the press marathon was chosen in a rather controversial way. It was the Kyiv food market, basically a place where a bunch of restaurants are located. Do you agree with such a placement? Is it appropriate?
It depends on the perception of the public, and if the PR manager of the president thought it will be appropriate, it depends on his decision. As a lawyer, maybe I may think about whether it was paid for this place from the state budget or not, but the press conference have taken place just yesterday, and maybe we will get this information in future.
Okay, well, it has been stated in the president's office that they have chosen such a location in order to introduce a new format of the president communicating with journalists. Now, this new format includes this new format means to show that the president is closer to the people. Do you think it worked?
Yes, I think it worked because it was it looked really that president was close to the journalists. Journalists were in groups of 10, maybe 7-10 people, and it looks very good. His answers were from time to time more weak, more stronger. But the duration was really 14 hours. You know, it's really impressive. And
okay, let's talk about the answers a little bit more. Since there were almost 300 journalists from different media outlets of Ukraine and around the world present at this press marathon, and they all had an opportunity to ask questions. Clearly, and it's absolutely logical that a number of questions on the most controversial topics and issues have been repeated. Now, and you could see by the second half of the conference, you could see that the president was kind of tired of being obliged to answer the same questions over and over again. In terms of transparency, openness, and truthfulness, how true was the president while giving the answers?
It's difficult to say because we have a lot of questions and a lot of answers, and we may assess his answers with the prehistory of his behavior before, because we know who is President Zelensky. He is the president of Ukraine almost half a year, and he was the most open in this press conference, and he tried to answer the truth in these questions, comparing all the other aspects, all the other cases when he talked with journalists in the previous history of his presidency and before, and it looks great. Yes, but the behavior of journalists, yes, a lot of them made a lot of mistakes because they answered, for example, 2-3 questions, and President Zelensky had an opportunity to answer clearly one question which fits for him, and the other so-so. And yes, a lot of questions have been repeated. Maybe journalists just do not watch the previous questions because it's a long time format, but yes, it was not very good because this repeating of the questions made the president tired, and maybe the audience also made tired.
Okay, let's talk about the journalists a little bit. How free did they feel while asking the questions? What I mean here is that in September, the Institute of Mass Information experts recorded a total of 21 cases of violations of freedom of speech in Ukraine. 17 were facts involving physical aggression against the journalists, and in total, since the beginning of the year, the Institute of Mass Information has recorded 1 murder, 83 cases of obstruction, 30 cases of threats, 17 cases of beating, and 15 cases of cyber attacks. Do you think that with the presidency of Volodymyr Zelensky, the freedom of speech in Ukraine actually gained momentum or not?
The freedom of speech does not depend the situation with the freedom of speech, does not depend directly from the president, from the personality of the president. And majority of the attacks on the journalists are committed by ordinary people or by local authorities, not by the president bodyguards or something like that. And
I totally agree with you. However, it's the president's responsibility to assure the freedom of speech in the country he was given an honor to be the leader of.
Yes, some working groups have been created at the office of the president, but we have questions about the transparency of this process, and there was just only one meeting, and we don't know any other meetings of this working group, and we are waiting for results of this working group. They have some time, maybe 1, 2, 3 months, but yes, we have plenty of space to improve the state policy towards the journalists, especially the safety of journalists. Yes, we have some articles in criminal court, but the quality of application of these norms of criminal code by the police officers and the investigators are not very good usually, and we have a lot of cases when the rights of journalists are have been breached, but just only maybe till the 10 cases are brought to the court after this incidents.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the process of de-oligarchization of Ukrainian media. Now, this topic was one of the hottest topics discussed during the press marathon held by Volodymyr Zelensky, and the president of Ukraine claimed that he is in favor of eliminating the political figures, the oligarchs, from the top management of the Ukrainian media. I have a quote by him. That's what he had to say. All media owners must be business people, not politicians. They may have a portfolio of 90%, but they should not influence the policy of one or another media. So what he suggested was to regulate the situation by a relevant law, the development of which he is willing to support. The Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports of Ukraine could prepare the document. And here is the explanation that President gave. He said, we were waiting for a fully formed ministry headed by Volodymyr Zelensky, and we would start. Then we will build a framework for this bill and discuss it. We need to discuss this with the TV channels so that we do not have any misunderstanding. Is the process of de-oligarchization, in your opinion, going to be effective enough and transform the media market of Ukraine, or is it just another promise that is not going to be fulfilled?
This is the promise of President Zelensky, and it became more clear, more concrete, because he stated that it depends on editorial policy, that media should have their independent editorial policy, and the oligarchs should not influence this editorial policy and the working of the media. In reality, we have some norms in the law on television and radio broadcasting, which are aimed to prevent such influence, but they are non-working. And I suppose the president and his team will really create some draft law. Maybe they improve these norms, and they may pass this through the parliament. But whether it will work or not, it depends on many aspects, and especially on the National Council on TV and radio broadcasting, of the quality of the work of the members of this National Council, and it may be reached, but it's difficult aim, because till recent years National Council did not try even to assess the content of television. They just were preoccupied with formal aspects like issuing licenses and measuring the quotas for advertising, for language, and so on. And this aspect, assessment of the content, is much more difficult, but they should do this, because the National Council is created for this.
Well, hopefully the situation is going to change, and the President Zelensky is going to fulfill all of his obligations stated during the press marathon that was held yesterday in central Kyiv. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
That was Roman Golovenko. He's the media lawyer, Institute of Mass Information. Thank you so much for watching Head to Head. Stay tuned with UATV for the rest.